Six Nations show on OTB SPORTS.
In association with Guinness, #Never Settle. Drink responsibly, visit drinkaware.ie.
Welcome to the Women's Six Nations show in association with Guinness. They are the proud partner of the Irish rugby team. I'm Valerie Wheeler. This week I'll be joined by two great guests, Niamh Briggs and Alan Quinlan. Niamh, Alan, welcome to the show.
Hi Valerie, how are you?
Hi Valerie, pleasure.
Good. Niamh, it's great. This weekend the curtains are finally closing on the Women's Six Nations campaign, but what a great few weeks we've had.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable to finish off with a Super Saturday type of a day. It's going to be brilliant as well for the sport and for women's rugby, I think. But yeah, look, it's been good. I've really liked the idea that the tournament is a standalone now and it's out on its own. Would prefer to see it go back to its original format with all the games. But yeah, look, I think for a first year, you know, with it being by itself and trying to promote itself that way, I think it's been a very positive experience.
Alan, for you, the window of opportunity, the women got a chance to shine over the last few weeks, which was amazing.
Yeah, it was. And as Niamh said, having a standalone tournament probably helped. It's been a long build-up for them to this tournament, and a lot of positive vibes. A lot of new players come into the group, some of Sevens players, and I think they've got a lot of coverage, which is a very important part of improving the whole profile around women's rugby, and giving them the proper media attention and coverage that they deserve. And then the viewing numbers in the last couple of weeks would have been very, very high. Unfortunately, it's a mixed bag. One good win against Wales, which was very comprehensive and great for them, and then the disappointment on home soil against a very good French team. But I think the more people that are talking about the game and giving it exposure, writing about it in the papers, talking about it in podcasts, it can only help the whole profile of the women's game.
Niamh, are you a tad bit jealous that there's this much opportunity, there's this much window, there's so much being talked about? You'd have loved this when you were playing.
I think I'm probably just more jealous that I'm not playing rugby anymore, to be honest, at that level than anything else. I think, you know, no better feeling being out there and playing at the highest level and testing yourself against the best players in the world. But from the other aspect, doesn't really put in or out of me, to be honest. And I think just for this group, it's so exciting to see you know, the progressions that they've made, the evolution of the squad over the last probably, 10, 12 months. And as Alan said, a little bit of a mixed bag, but plenty of learnings for them in what ultimately will be the most important thing come September for that World Cup qualification.
Taking a look back at last weekend's game first today, I know they went into the Wales game so confident, great win, and then unfortunately France, Alan, was a bit of a reality for them.
Yeah, it was. It's hard to judge where they were at after Wales. And I was actually speaking to some people about that performance, and I watched it. It was very, very impressive in the first half. It got a little bit sloppy in the second half. And the question, you always ask, and I know from my own experience of playing, when you win so comprehensively, were you very good, or were they bad, or was it somewhere in the middle? And I think it was somewhere in the middle. Ireland were very, very good for periods of that game, and Wales were poor and made a lot of mistakes, and they were punished. And then you go on to the French game, and there's a fair bit of optimism, there's a fair bit of confidence. There's reality as well that the French team are very, very strong and powerful, and a lot of their players are semi-pros, and they probably have more competitive games on a regular basis, bigger playing pool to choose from. So all those factors, you have to take them into account, and it's the same in the men's game. Ireland and England and France have always been the two kind of dominant powers in the men's game, and that's always a challenge and down to player pools. And it's the same for the women's game, and they're one of the strongest. France, England, New Zealand, they're probably the three that are ahead of everyone else. And there's a gap there, and it's closing that gap. And I think, I suppose when you play against very, very good sides in any sport, you've got to make sure that you bring close to your top performance and that you really perform and that you get things right and you limit mistakes and you play well, and that you stop the opposition from imposing themselves and building on their strengths. And that was the hope going into the game, that it could have been tighter. There was a real anticipation about it. But unfortunately, those mistakes that Ireland made and that the team made kind of were punished severely, and that's what happens against good teams. So that's something that they will have looked back on and reviewed this week and probably be frustrated about. There were certainly things you can avoid. There's certain things in rugby that sometimes it's down to the fight, the collisions, and Niamh will know this, the one-on-one tackles, things. You can make little mistakes and errors, but when you have the ball, you've got to try and protect it as best you can. And particularly, as I said, when you're playing against a very good side, hold on to the ball, build phases, and not give it back to them cheaply. And that was probably the key last week. There was mistakes and there was unforced errors, and then France punished them, and they're brilliant at that. When they get their confidence up, it's hard to stop them. So it was disappointing, and I think the scoreline was a little bit unfair. I think if they both played again this week, I think it'd be closer. But it was a bit of a reality check that there is a gap. But you can learn from those experiences as well, Valerie. I think if you have adversity in sport and you are building something, which Niamh Briggs is trying to do with these girls, you have to learn the harsh lessons, deal with the reality, and understand, about getting your set piece, lineouts, breakdowns, stuff like that, and protecting the ball right. And no matter how good the opposition are, that's in your control. I know you get put on under pressure at different points throughout the game, but they will have learned from that, I hope, hopefully, and it'll make them stronger in the future. But there is a gap, and the top three and Niamh will know more about this, they're just a step above, and that's the ambition, is where Ireland want to try and get to.
Niamh, that frustrates you, the talk, doesn't it? The talk of the professional and the difference between the sides.
Yeah, it does, because it's only purely because I don't think if we threw 30 contracts at players tomorrow morning, that it would close that gap. It just simply wouldn't. I think the structures and the pathways just haven't been there. They're starting to come into place now, but it's going to take time, and we have to be patient, unfortunately. And so it's not really a quick fix. And in order for this game to be, have sustainability and longevity, it has to be done right. But look, Alan completely summed it up perfectly there. It was a case of too many mistakes and errors compounded with more errors, and 20 penalties given away. You can't do that at this level, and you can't do that at any level in a rugby match, and you're going to get punished. But France were so good. They were so clinical. Their execution, their accuracy, their ability to move the ball to space, but also for me, big thing was their ability to read the game and what was going on around them. There were times that Ireland probably got on a little bit on their front foot and looked to get outside them onto the edge, and didn't see that opportunity, or didn't have the confidence to be able to execute it. And they're only going to get better with the more games that they play at that level. But unfortunately, they're learning on an international stage, and that's a really hard thing for them. Yeah,
I would put that to Alan as well, about having them learn on the international stage. It's not exactly ideal that this is where these young players are learning and getting the experience from, when the likes of grassroots and stuff, we could, maybe start there.
Yeah, I think there's obviously, you want the IRFU to support it and drive it and fund it when it happens in certain situations. And I do agree with Niamh. I'm not advocating you give out 30 contracts and it's going to solve the problem and the girls can go away and train full time and really focus on their game. It helps, it would help, but it's a bit of a stopgap. The key here, and it's the same in the men's game, if you're trying to expand your playing numbers and get more players playing, you've got to get out into communities, you've got to get development officers going, you've got to get into schools, you've got to encourage young girls that this is enjoyable, this is something that brings people together, the game of rugby, educate them about that, and try and encourage them to get down to their local club. But maybe in schools, get more schools playing the game as well. Encouraging, it's not just an IRFU thing. I think every rugby club in the country should try and develop the women's game within their club. Underage teams and, an adult team as well like that. And because genuinely, they bring a huge vibrancy and energy into the club, a huge enthusiasm. They increase the numbers, they increase the help, the whole profile of the club. I remember I'm not sure exactly when my junior club, Clanwilliam, started a ladies team, and they had brilliant success, and they went on and won a Munster Cup. And I just remember those couple of years that the women's team and the women's rugby in the club, it just brought a great vibrancy to the club. We were getting bossed around by the women a little bit as well on the committees and stuff like that, and they wanted their place at the table, and all that stuff was brilliant. And there was real change within a male-dominated sport and a club that was dominated by men, and that was really brilliant. And I think it surged for a couple of years, and then difficulties came in getting the women to play and getting the play numbers and having the numbers to play a team. Now, I know lots of clubs around the country have women's teams and underage and adults, but I just think I remember that experience myself. My own cousin was the captain of the team. I remember we went to Limerick to see him winning a trophy. It was incredible. It was brilliant for the club. Everybody got behind it, and it was really, really enjoyable. And I think that's really important, that we try and encourage the clubs. And obviously, media support and help around the women's game is important as well. And even from a point of view of not getting these girls to go on and play for Ireland, but the vibrancy and the energy it brings into the club is really important. And hopefully then the girls can improve their skills, get good coaching, and then if there's an ambition for them to go on and represent their country or represent Munster or whatever, I think that pathway is there from. So I think the key to this is definitely trying to get more playing numbers, and that's probably the secret to a lot of the good stuff that's going on in the UK and in France and in New Zealand and Australia, maybe, that they have more numbers, and it's all about numbers. And if you have big playing numbers, you're probably going to get a number of players and more opportunities of selecting players who want to go on and are good enough to go on and play at representative level and go on and play at senior level in the All-Ireland League and stuff like that. And I'm sure Niamh would love to see more clubs throughout the country playing and giving women that opportunity. And it is a long-term process, but it's a process now that maybe, has been neglected a little bit. And maybe this whole media presence around it and the attention and the rightly so that the women are getting now will encourage more young girls to go out and play and get involved in their clubs.
Yeah, and I know we could spend the whole show talking about this and the difference between them, what we can do to get them to the stage that we want them to be at. When we maybe should discuss last week, Niamh, you were at the game. There was positive signs early in the start of the game, but I do think it was just come half time, unfortunately it was over, but there was early signs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're going into a game like that and you get a half a sniff or a half an edge and you don't take it, then, France have the ability to make you pay for it. As Alan said earlier on, that when you make mistakes and turn the ball over as much as Ireland did, a team like France will make you pay. And, one knock on, one rep ball and you're underneath the posts. I thought there was definitely times where, off line-out carries that they had created numbers on the edge in terms of their ability to attack but didn't take it. I also thought they created space in the backfield, just didn't see it. But they're creating them. And, it'd be different if it was a case that they weren't getting any parity at all anywhere across the pitch. I thought there was definitely moments of it. I thought, they battled well but they're not open to not being criticised, and that's what we're there, as a punter or someone analysing the game. There were moments there that they just made some really bad errors, and at this level you can't do that. Silly penalties give away, and you're just giving France an easy out, and you're making life so much easier for them. And when you spill the ball forward or you get it ripped from contact and one kick over and like that's probably my only worry, that anytime France had any sort of line break, it was a try straight away. So there's obviously a little bit of a disconnect in that backfield in terms of the defensive structure. So I'm sure they'll be working on that a lot this week. But probably the biggest positive I'll take from that is that the likes of those young players, Bathing, Parsons, Starty Wall, Eve Higgins, Emily Lane, you know, these girls, Catherine Dane, they'd have learned way more from that 80 minutes than they would have learned from the previous 80 against Wales. And when you're at that level and you make a big mistake or even a small mistake, you'll get punished. And if you can't find your way into a game because there's no space on the edge for you, then you have to try and learn how to come in off a shoulder and create that space. And I think that from that perspective, that'll be the biggest positive you could take from that, would be the learning. If as long as they do learn it, then it'll be the learning that they can take from that going into next week, but also down the road. So if they do meet France again, they know, like, we've spoken so much about those young players, especially Bailey and Doherty after the first round, and they were definitely going to be marked. They're going to be marked for forevermore, because they're so big, so powerful in terms of Doherty, and Bailey is just like a lightning quick, powerful, unbelievable feat. Just seems to be the whole package at 19 years of age. So you are going to be marked. So they've got to learn now to try and take themselves away from that situation and try and find a way into the game. But so if they take that as, if they take those learnings, then I would definitely take that as a positive.
Yeah, I think after the game last Saturday, Ireland were very vocal in the build-up about how confident they were, but I was speaking to Captain Ciara Griffin after, and she said how their mindset need to change this week heading into the game. Let's take a listen.
Obviously, look, it's not the happiest dressing room, but in terms of us and what we can do, is focus on what we can improve, what we can fix, what we can change, and just focusing on us. So that's the main thing, really, what we can bounce back with now, because we have we have a big week this week leading up again, and you can't drop your head now because it's not finished yet. We've another cup final next weekend, and you have to get ready for that.
That was Ciara Griffin, captain, speaking after the game last week. I know, Alan, when I was chatting to her as well, she said that they'd love another crack off France, I suppose, this week, because they'd have learned so much.
Yeah, that's the nature of sport. And, I experienced that many times where you, particularly in the European Cup, where you play those back-to-back games, you go to the south of France one week, you get walloped, and you have them back on home soil the week after, and I think the result is completely flipped over. So if they played France this week, obviously France would be strong favourites to win it. But I think the Ireland girls there's a lot of technical things there that they got wrong, timing of passing, some of the decision making, as Niamh said, when you're under pressure. I think at times they tried to run around France, where they probably needed to be a little bit more direct and control the tempo of the game. And in those wider channels, then they got a little bit isolated and they got turned over. And God, I was very impressed with the ferocious nature of both sides, the breakdown. But France, just the numbers they get in there, their technique, their body position, they just made it very, very difficult to get any sort of quick ball or engage the back line or the numbers, because, if you can get the ball to Baby Parsons, she's devastating. And, she was getting ball where she was being marked by, an inside defence coming across and a couple of French players in front of her. And you can't expect, no matter how good she is or quick she is, just to produce a piece of magic and run through people. You want to try and give her a chance to run one-on-one with her own winger and see if she can get there, get some line break. It's, of course, if you got a chance, and that's the frustrating thing for the players, because I think they've all spoken about the mistakes, and they haven't hidden away from the mistakes they've made, which is very admirable, because they've taken it on the chin, and I think they'd be pretty determined when they look back at the videos to see some of the decisions, some of the errors that really kind of cost them tries. France went down the field, scored tries from turnovers, from bad decision-making. So there are things you can fix. And I think going forward, when you play the top couple of teams, you get an understanding that, look, it's going to be very, very difficult to beat them. We've got to get everything right on the day, but we must protect the ball. And there's certain things you can and can't do. And I just think that as the game wore on, and some of the tries, particularly the ones before half-time, were really, really deflating. And it's about mindset in that position to understand that, okay, we've made a mistake, we've given away a try, but the next action is really, really important. And that comes with a bit of experience. So I think they have lots of ability, but it's just tightening up in some of those areas. And I don't know what Niamh thinks. I think the quality of the game, the standard has improved. There's a lot of pace to the game. The skills are better. But there's always a case, and it's the same in the men's game, for a bit of old doggedness, keeping the ball tight, sticking it up the jumper, holding on to it, and just managing the tempo of the game. And I think they were a little bit guilty last week of chasing it, and then another mistake happened, and then France capitalised. So they will learn from that. And like I said, I like the fact that they haven't shied away from the fact that they believe they're better, and that they have to get better in certain areas. And hopefully we'll see that going forward, and that they will get another crack at France, maybe at the World Cup. You know, this is a building process, and, you know, they've a really good performance against Wales, good win, finish on a high now, and that would be really positive for them, that they can, you know, really review this going forward and try and get better for the next time they come together for those World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, we will touch on what they've learned in just a little bit. Go for it, Niamh.
Sorry, just on that, just in relation to what Quinlan was saying there, they also have to have an understanding too about game management and where they're going, like, in terms of, you know, if you keep it up the jumper and you keep tight and you're not getting anything over the gain line, then there has to be space in the backfield if they've filled the front field. So I feel like they probably could have used kick the corners a small bit more in terms of putting pressure and back on France in terms of that territory battle. I felt like we probably in the first half especially played way too much. Then you look at someone like Stacey Flood comes on, and her ability to throw passes 10, 15 metres off both hands, she's like the type of person that can unlock those kind of tight defences, because she can see where the defences are coming up and in. So for me, it's like a lot of understanding of knowing how the game is going, understanding the who's under pressure and where you're under pressure, and then your ability to try and get out of that. And I just think, as you said earlier on, very like Ireland can only do that, but more times that they learn, and that's something that more games they play at that level, you know, not like a Wales level, at a France level, so that they can then get better and better, if that makes any sense, at understanding where the game is.
Yeah, we will touch on the Ireland game just a little bit. You are listening to the Women's Six Nations show on Off the Ball, of course, in association with Guinness, who are proud partners of the Irish rugby team. But before we look ahead to the Ireland game, there is another game that's going to take our fancy this weekend, and it is, of course, England and France. Niamh, quickly, how do you think this is going to go? I mean, this is going to be an absolute cracker to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be brilliant. I just saw the English team there just before I came online, and a bit surprising that Sarah Hunter is not involved and she's on the bench. And Meg Jones is Meg 23, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, she's plays for Wasps and is part of this GB7's team, and was absolutely brilliant in the last round, fair match. So that's kind of the calibre of player that England are able to leave out and fill with a player just as good. So yeah, from that perspective, you know, England obviously picked their strongest team. I think Sarah Hunter as captain is still coming back from injury, but I think it's going to be an unbelievable battle. I'll be really interested to see who France select, because I felt like that they left a lot of their stronger players on the bench against Ireland, and maybe they probably knew that they were going to be too strong for Ireland, similar to England as well previous week for them, that they were able to mix and match their teams and then have a fully loaded team for the third week and for game day 3. So it's going to be incredibly exciting. I think I love how France are playing the game at the moment. They seem to be fitter than I've ever remembered them to be, and they're also, their knowledge and how they see the game is just it's joy to watch. If it's not against your team, I think, because like for example for the game last weekend, all their players bar their fullback Emily Bordon was all playing minis rugby the whole way up. She only started playing rugby 4 years ago. There's just ability to understand unstructured play and to be able to run lines off each other without being structured, if that makes any sense. It's brilliant. It's really cool to watch, to be fair, and that's the level that probably most teams aspire to be. I think the fact that England are at home probably just gives them a little bit of an edge. But yeah, it'll be a really tight game for sure.
Are you going for England? So you are.
I don't know. I think France are just a little bit fickle in terms of a bit like the men. Like Alan know that some days they can rock up and be brilliant, and other days they'll struggle to string a few baskets together, especially when they're travelling. They drew away to Scotland last year, lost away to Italy the last time they played them away, so they could just come with everything. But I feel like they're in a different space this time around. They looked really confident, and but yeah, I think England at home probably just has a little bit too much for them up front.
Right, moving on to this weekend, and the big game that we are looking forward to is, of course, Ireland and Italy. Alan, you know, Italy, dynamic, great ball handlers. Ireland are up for it again this weekend.
Yeah, it's. I think the big advantage is, if it's an advantage, if they turn it into an advantage themselves, is having Italy to, you know, travelling to Dublin. I think for the quarantine reasons. That puts Ireland in a better position. They're on familiar ground. The negative is the last time they were there, it was a negative result. So there'll be huge determination, I think, to try and finish on a high and win this game. They beat Italy in October. There's a bit of chopping and changing on both sides. So it's hard, you know, especially when it's 6-7 months ago. You can't put a lot of stock in that, but. The results have been positive against Italy, and you know, England beat them in round 2 by 67 points to 3. So we're not really sure where they're at, but it's a game they should fancy, and it's a game that if they improve and don't make the same kind of mistakes as last week, and it's kind of frustrating talking about this a lot. We're mentioning the word mistakes. I think the one thing I'd love to see for the team this week is their ability to play themselves and you know, get some go forward, get their forwards carrying the ball. I think Dorothy Wall for me was you know, she's so powerful, she's incredibly aggressive, and she has an ability to get over the gain line. And you know, I think if they make some good carries, engage them a bit, and challenge them up front. So they should try and do a role reversal this week, get their scrum rock solid, their line out, their maul. You know, you're thinking if they can maul over the line against France like they did last week on 2 occasions, well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand, use it as your strength, try and get into the right areas, as Niamh said, play some territory. But I think it's important they start the game well this weekend. And listen, there'll always be mistakes at any level. And you've just got to dust yourself down and make sure you don't back them up with more. So I think they've got to keep it simple enough early on, settle into the game, manage the tempo, get a couple of penalties or get a try, get ahead, and then they can start building slowly there. So hopefully they can do that and impose their own game on Italy.
Niamh, talk to us a bit about Italy. You know, they play attacking rugby, but they still leaked 20 points against Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they kind of go with that high risk, high reward type of rugby where they try and get the ball to the edge as quickly as possible because, to be fair, their back three are lightning quick. And they like to throw an offload or two. So while it looks good to watch when it comes off, I think there's definitely areas that Ireland can get in and get at them, get into that passing channel, get their line speed up, and don't allow them to get the ball to the edge because players like Manuel Forlan is probably one of the best fullbacks/wingers in the world. She's definitely up there in terms of her, you know, ability to be able to step and people. She scored a hat-trick last weekend. Rigoni in the centre scored twice, and they have one player in back, Franco, who's similar to Dorothy Wall in terms of her ability to get over the gain line, power and pace. And she was injured last weekend, so if she comes in, she brings a lot more structure to them, and she's the one that kind of leads that defensive shift, I think, for them. So it'll all depend, I suppose, on the team that's selected, but. Yeah, there's definitely areas that you can get at them, as Alan said, set piece for sure. And Ireland should feel like they can physically dominate Italy in that respect, especially in around the tight. And after that, then, you know, it's about picking the right option, making good decisions, and protecting the ball. But yeah, I think this Italy team are definitely improving loads. They've been on a bit of a journey the last few years as well, and they're not experienced, let me say, sense. Like there's from half there, Bertan is nearly 100 caps, Manuel Forlan is up to 50, I think, and likes of Renoni and Scolari were playing when I was playing. So like they're definitely cohesive in terms of their ability to play with each other, and they know each other. So that'll definitely prove a bit of a danger point. But they started like an absolute rocket ship last October and were 7 points up in the first 5 minutes, and Ireland came back at them. But I'd imagine they'll have learned a lot from that too. So it'll be an incredibly close game.
You touched on team selection. We should have the team for Ireland quite soon. Are you expecting a good few changes?
I think they'll probably look to change a few. I think they've players probably just making a couple of mistakes around last week, and also you're trying to breed as much strength and depth as you can in your squad in terms of what's coming down the road in September. So I'm sure there probably will be, to be fair. I think Adam backed those girls after the Welsh win, and so you probably try and get more game time for a few more players. But it'll be interesting to see.
Do you find it hard, Niamh, when I ask your team selection? Would you be like, if I said to you, who do you think should be coming off and going in, would you find it hard to pick a few? Or
No, I think I've been really impressed with Stacey Flood the last 2 games since she's come on. I thought her ability to pick passes in space. She's not played a huge amount of rugby at 10, I think, so that's interesting. I think, it's her second cap, and she can kick off tee as well. So from that perspective, I'd like to see her get a little bit more game time. I think I'd like to see Emily Murphy-Crowe on the wing. She's obviously ripped up the sevens for a long time, but it's great to finally get her into a 15th jersey for sure. So I feel like that. I think Enya Breen had a brilliant season last season, obviously curtailed by injury, and working her way back in. She was involved in the first game, not involved last weekend. I'd like to see her come in, and because she just packs a more powerful punch in terms of her physicality in that midfield. But yeah, look, I suppose you don't want to change too much, but you need to try and give girls game time, and I think that's probably the hard balance that they've got to try and manage.
During the week, I was chatting to Ireland's Quinlan Maloney, and she spoke about how they have learned a lot in the last 2 games.
We probably needed a bit of realism in both the win and the loss. We underperformed in certain areas against Wales. No one would deny that they're kind of in a bit of a transitional period right now. So we kind of probably overemphasised some of the good stuff we did against Wales and didn't really recognise some of the not so good patches that we had against a weaker opposition. And then similarly, we just failed to execute our game plan really against France. We coughed up possession too easy. Our penalty count was way too high. We didn't problem solve at set piece. They're all things that we've realised now. And I think if we're going to be honest as a squad, we'd love to be able to hop off them again this Saturday, because I think it will be a very different game. And I just hope that I hope that public don't lose faith that there is huge rising stars and rising talent in this squad.
Yeah, it's right. Huge stars and rising talent. Looking at the game, Alan, what positives can they take from last week, or what can they have learned that they can go, right, let's do this week against Italy?
Well, I think, like I said, the ability is there, and they did create some opportunities, but then the final pass or the final decision let them down a little bit. So it's just about doing, rugby is about managing the game. We're probably arguing for a long time now about the approach in the game and the way the game has been played, particularly at the top level in the men's game. There's so much pressure to win, particularly around the Six Nations, and teams don't take many risks, and it's all about managing the game. And that's great if you're a player or a coach, but sometimes the spectacle isn't great. But sometimes that's what's required. And I think this team and the girls need to learn about game management and just controlling the tempo. I think and maybe they fell into a little bit of a trap after being so dominant the week before. Like I said, there's always the few errors and stuff like that, and they had them against Wales, but they scored some great tries, and they were able to express themselves. And what do you do when you can't do that? How does your key decision makers, your 9, your 10, your number 8, your fullback, who's vocal there saying, look, slow things down, play a little bit of territory, be a bit drab for a while and be a bit negative, but frustrates the opposition. So I think it's getting the balance right of controlling the tempo and then getting to express yourself. So if they get the ball to Emer Considine and Babine Parsons and it's quality ball, well, those girls can run. they can get through gaps, they can create space, and they're finishers. So that's the name of the game in rugby. You know, your wingers and your full backs are the ones you want to try and create the space. The backs score the tries more often than not. But then there's times where, like I said, you use your maul, you kick to the corner, and you make a statement to the opposition that we're going over here. You're not going to stop us. You win the line out and you get that maul rumbling, and then there's psychological blows you can land. So for most of these girls, I know there's some very experienced players and then some inexperienced players. It's about learning that, but there needs to be a desperation to beat Italy on Saturday, because I think it'll set the girls back mentally themselves a good bit if they don't win, and if they don't at least get a performance. You're never guaranteed any results, but they need to get a performance full of energy, determination and aggression this week. And I think Niamh said it at the very start, if you give 20 penalties away in a match, you're asking for big trouble. There's very few teams will win a game at any level if you look at the stats afterwards and they've given away 20 penalties. So your discipline is a big part of that. And so look, I'm sure there's been a huge amount for these girls to process this week. There's been a lot of work for the coaches looking back. And if you focus on all the negatives, well, sometimes you can forget about the positives. There's a lot of aggressive ball players there. We need to get our back row carrying the ball. Dorothy Wall, Claire Malloy, you know, we need to just get them rumbling with the ball, getting over the gain line, get some pick and goes going, and get into the game early and make a real statement from a physical point of view early in the game. And then, you know, that bit of talent and ability that they have, and that ability to move the ball through the hands, hopefully will tell then.
I don't think they're going to underestimate Italy, Niamh, because, to be honest, they were only second 2 years ago, and after maybe France last week, they'll want to go in here and they'll want to finish on a high.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we spoke about all the threats that Italy have already, and so 100%. And look, I know Ciara Griffin and how she operates, and she'll have brought back down in terms of where they are, but also pick them up to tell them that really, like, you know, we can all have an off day and a bad performance, but it's how we bounce back from that. And so I think that'll be the big thing. It'll be their ability to come back with that energy. And look, it's a bit difficult when we look here. It's easy for us to sit here on the outside looking in, but you have to remember that first game. That was their first game for some of them in 6 months, some of them 13 months. So you rock up to Wales and you're just so exuberant, so energised, just want to be everywhere. You're running around like Energizer bunnies. And then, you know, after that, you know, 6-7 days later, you're trying to get up for France. It's very difficult to get up back to that pitch that you were at the week before. And that has to be a part of it too. You know, it is hard. And that's not to do with the fitness of the squad. It's probably better than it's ever been. It's to do with the mental side of the game and the ability to tune in and understand each moment and each detail. You know, that took a huge amount of energy, that Wales game, not because Ireland were clocking up a huge amount of meters, etc. It was to do with the fact that it's probably their first game for a good chunk of them in a very, very, very long time. So you'd like to think that, you know, they'll be able to bounce back from that French game now, and you'd like to see some of that energy and that exuberance and that ability to get off the line in defence but attack square and with pace and attack. And if they can do that, then I think they'll be okay.
A week to turn it around. Alan, can Ireland win this weekend?
Yeah, they can. Of course they can. And I think Niamh hit the nail on the head there. It's a mental challenge. This is about mentally getting right, getting their focus right, believing in themselves, and working on some of the stuff during the week for sure, but really getting the head right and not panicking if Italy throw something at them or get a try, or even Italy start the game well. It's about not panicking, and I hope that they've spoken about that. I'm sure they will. And then just having a real desire and a will to finish on a high and get a result here. That's very important for them. I hope they get it, because to be fair to them, their effort level, their work rate was through the roof last week. I just felt sorry for them in a sense that certain things happened that were in their control, certain things out of their control, and they were against a very good side. So I think they never gave up. They showed loads of passion. But they've got to bring that with a bit of an edge this week, and I think they can do it, yes.
Ireland or Italy, Niamh?
Ireland. Yeah.
All day, every day.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well,
Yeah. No, I think they'll be too.
You think too? Brilliant.
I just think they'll be too strong. I think they'll bounce back. I just think that they've too much work gone on over the last 16, 17 months to be defined on last weekend.
Well, brilliant. You were listening to the Women's Six Nations show on Off the Ball in association with Guinness. They are a proud partner of the Irish rugby team. Thanks, of course, to our two guests this week, Niamh Briggs and Alan Quinlan. You're absolutely wonderful. I will be back next week and we see how Ireland fared against Italy, and we will be building and looking to the World Cup, which is great.
The Women's Six Nations show on OTB Sports.
In association with Guinness, drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.